In this example, I want to take a look at what you're going to do to manage the Windows command prompt if you don't have a Windows machine. So I know a lot of you are Mac-specific users, and I'll have kind of a corresponding video for Windows users that don't have access to a Unix-like machine. But this video is really intended in one direction, which is I'm a non-native Windows user. My classwork is completed on a non-native Windows machine, so what do I do to access the Windows command prompt? Okay, so this is jumping ahead a little bit in the semester in that we're covering a new AWS service to manage this. The service that we're going to use is EC2, which stands for Elastic Cloud Computing. So I'm logged into the console, I'm going into EC2. And you'll see that I have 0 running instances. And the idea behind these running instances is basically what EC2 does is they sell you virtual hardware for use, and you pay by the hour. So I'm really aggressive about managing those virtual instances so I'm not getting billed. If you're on the free tier, so if you're in the initial 12-month free tier plan, so for your initial 12 months you don't pay for some free tier things within AWS, then you don't have to worry about this and you're not going to get billed. Otherwise, if you're not on the free tier plan, you're getting billed a little over 30 cents a day for running an EC2 instance, one of the free tier eligible EC2 instances. Okay, so the way we're going to solve this problem of not having access to a Windows command prompt is we're going to set up an EC2 instance. And when you think of an EC2 instance, think of it as like a virtual machine. Okay, so I'm going to go into the instances, and I'm going to launch an instance. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to filter for free tier only instances. And what that's going to do is that's going to bring up a certain level of hardware that AWS is letting you try for free. Okay, so the Windows machine that I want to use in this case is the Windows Server 2019 base. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And then, as I mentioned, you're paying for virtual hardware. So what ends up happening is they bill you based on the amount of virtual hardware. And there's different price points depending on what you're actually choosing. So do I want 1 virtual CPU up to 8 virtual CPUs? And then my memory allocation, I'm paying for that as well. And then network performance, I'm paying for that as well. But I'm going to just stick with the free tier eligible because we're only using the command prompt in this instance. I could go through all the configurations, so there's, I think, like 5 different configuration steps, but in this case it's not really necessary. I can just review and launch this virtual machine. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and launch it. And in order to connect to that machine, I'm going to need a username and password. And the way AWS provides security for that is they have a private key file that allows you to connect to that virtual machine. So I'm going to create a new key pair, and what this is going to be is my Windows VM demo. And I'm going to go ahead and save that to my desktop. So there it is on my desktop. And I'm going to launch that instance. I'll show you where that key pair comes in a second. I should be able to go back to EC2, and it says my instances are now launching. So basically, it takes a second or two for those instances to launch, and what'll happen is those instances are actually starting up. So it says it's running right now, and it's initializing. So if I click on this instance, it's going to give me a public IP address and a public DNS address. And then I also have the option to connect up here in the top right. So I'm going to click on that connect button. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this RDP client. And what RDP stands for is Remote Desktop Protocol. Okay, so one thing that I have to do, since I'm using a Mac to create this video and to connect to this virtual machine, is I had to download the Microsoft Remote Desktop software. It's a free application that you can use, that you can get from the App Store, and it's cross-platform, meaning it's automatically installed on your Windows devices. It's a free download on your Mac or on Linux. So I already have that. It's on the App Store, and I'll show you the icon here in a second. but I'm going to download that remote desktop file. Okay, so it's got an EC2 prefix, so I'm going to save that to my desktop. And then what I'm going to do is, you see down below there's a get password. It's not necessarily intuitive that it's a button, but it's actually a button. So if I cursor over it, you can kind of see the background color change. So I'm going to click that get password. And the way I get a password is, and it's telling me it's not available, obviously. The way I get a password is basically I upload that private key file that I had downloaded previously. So on my desktop I have that private key file, which is the PEM file, and then I also have the remote desktop file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a password using this private key file, and then I can use that password to then connect using this RDP file. So let's go ahead and just open up the RDP file, and I'll show you what that looks like. You can see the Microsoft Remote Desktop software icon. Okay, and it's asking me to enter a username and password. So administrator is going to be my username, and then password I don't know yet. I have to wait at least 4 minutes for this instance. Okay, so I'm going to try to connect again. I doubt that it's been 4 minutes yet, but I'm going to try to get a password. It looks like it's available now, and then I can just upload that private key. So you can see that it gives me the private key, and I can decrypt a password now. And I'm just going to copy that to my clipboard. And what that'll allow me to do is it'll allow me to switch over to remote desktop. I can paste that in. So I just pasted that value in, and I can continue. And what this should look like is it's going to look like a Windows server instance. Okay, so it's a Windows virtual machine. It's kind of taking over full screen at this point. It doesn't have to be full screen, but it's easy to work that way. So it's taking over full screen, and it's bringing up that Windows virtual machine that I'll be able to work on. Okay, so once it's fully launched, I have a Windows virtual machine that's here that I can use to run my command line tools that I'm going to need. Okay, so I have a non-native Windows machine, and what I want to do is I actually want to bring up the command prompt so I can complete Lab 2. So if I go ahead and head over to the Start menu, the way I'm going to access the command prompt is I bring up the Start menu, and I just start typing. So I'm going to type in the text CMD. Okay, so I typed in CMD, and it'll automatically search. It'll bring up that command prompt. And once I have the command prompt up, I'm able to run the commands that I need to run. So if I wanted to see a directory listing, I could do that. If I wanted to change the directory, so instead of being my current working directory being at this administrator folder, I want to go onto the desktop. Okay, so I have a fully working command prompt that I can use to complete any kind of Windows-related tasks within this virtual machine. Okay, so this is how I work on a Windows machine when I actually need access to a Windows machine. Is I'll use a virtual machine, and instead of having a virtual machine on my local file system, I let AWS manage that virtual machine. Okay. As I was saying, EC2 is a paid service. So if you're on the free tier for the first 12 months, it's free, but after the first 12 months, it's no longer free. So I end up paying for this virtual machine in order to use it, and I pay by the hour is how AWS is billing me. Okay, so let's say I'm completely finished with the demo now. I've done what I needed to do, and I use the Windows command prompt, and I'm happy. I've done all the things in Windows that I needed to accomplish. I can log off of this virtual machine. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect. And then I'm going to come back over to EC2. And what it's going to show me is that I have that instance running. So here's instances, and it's running. So if I click on that, there is this filter, so I could see all my instances. So I have some that are terminating, and I have one that's running. That was the one that we just set up. what I can do with that instance is I can say I want to stop that instance. And by stopping that instance, I'm basically saying, AWS, I don't need access to this virtual machine. Please stop billing me by the hour. I don't need access to it right now. So you can reallocate that hardware to someone else. Stop billing me at this point. Then, if I'm completely done with it, just to kind of clean things up, I can come through and I can say, I want to actually terminate that instance. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and terminate the instance because this is just kind of a quick throwaway demo for me. But that's how I'm going to create that Windows virtual machine that's going to allow me to work within Windows even though I don't have a native Windows machine. Okay, so a couple of things just as a clarification point, a couple of things. When we set up our EC2 instance, we are getting billed for it. Your bill might be covered as part of that free tier for the first 12 months, but after 12 months, you're going to get billed hourly. Then the easiest way to connect to that virtual machine is to use Microsoft's remote desktop tool, and that comes prepackaged on Windows. So if you have a Windows machine, you can connect to another Windows machine using Microsoft Remote Desktop. If you're in the situation where you're using this virtual machine because you don't have a Windows machine, then you're going to have to download some software from the App Store or from wherever you get your applications, and that software would be the Microsoft Remote Desktop software, and that's what will allow you to connect to this virtual machine. Okay, so that's how I use EC2 to create a Windows virtual machine when I need to work in a Windows environment.